it's a big thing that I've looked at since when I very first started, and I tried to find the definition for it. And the definition for me is a community is the readership that talks to each other. So like you have your readership, but if you can develop an atmosphere, if you can develop a community, a place where those readers then autonomously talk to each other, like without your prompt, that is where things can grow organically. Because if things require your injection all the time, it will fall apart without you. And as soon as you disappear, it's not a community. It's just people standing around to hear you speak. But a community is when they're standing around to hear each other speak.
I think that's always fun when you see that kind of stuff happen online, and you almost feel like a voyeur watching. You're like, oh, I shouldn't be hearing this conversation. They're talking about me. But that's a really cool thing. I think I'm also kind of coming up in developing what community means. Because I'm a newer author. I'm still working on creating what that community means for me. I think a big part of it is right now it's a lot of hand-holding and having those conversations direct with readers and trying to help initiate some of that community. And hopefully it keeps on going.
That entry point to a community can be very different for different people. So like someone can become invested, like seeing you on a podcast, seeing you on an interview, or someone else can become invested, like you're talking about writing a book that you're starting to write. So there are actually many entry points into a community, and also being conscious of the fact of making multiple entry points into your community.
What is up, everybody? You are listening to episode 163 of SFF Addicts. I am your host for today, MJ Kuhn, and welcome to your weekly dive into the world of science fiction, fantasy, and writing craft. As a quick note, before we really get rolling today, you can support SFF Addicts on Patreon for a ton of cool extras. We got bonus episodes, we got author readings, all kinds of cool stuff, merch discounts, the whole deal. So check the links in the description to help us do what we do here. And don't forget to rate and review the podcast on your favorite app. And you can subscribe to the FanFiAddict YouTube channel, where this and every other episode of the show is available in full video so you can see our smiling faces. And now, welcoming to SFF Addicts, the participants of today's Indie Appreciation Month panel. So joining us today, we have the incredible Ryan Cahill, Tatiana O.B., and James Lloyd Dulin. Welcome to the show, everybody. How are you doing?
I literally thought you had said, rate us on your favorite app. I'm your favorite.
That's great. If you want to rate us on your favorite app and be like, MJ's the bomb in the comments, I won't say no to that either. That's fine. Amazing. How's everybody doing today?
I'm doing all right. It's been a long day. It's close. Like my kids just went to bed over here. I know everybody's at a different time zone, so but it's getting late here.
Yeah, it's pretty late over here too. Today I just mailed off a bunch of books. I don't know if I want to do that again, but I survived.
I have been there. I remember we were talking about it recently when I did like my first novella, and I was mailing out the first ones that came. We said we do like 50 numbered ones. And I decided like an idiot to hand paint the gold page edges. This was like 2021, and I was so like ready for it. Yeah, I'm going to do this and hand paint them. And I was like 5 books in, and I was done. I was so done.
You're like, I've made a grave mistake.
That's how I ended up working with the broken binding. I ended up talking to them. We both started at the same time, and I was like, guys, I don't want to mail books anymore. Please, it's really horrible. It's not fun.
Well, you make a mistake.
Take whatever you need.
And then you learn your lessons the next time.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like seriously.
Before we dig deeper into the episode, a quick word from our sponsor. Poe Targe's job was to stand at attention and look good in a uniform, unless someone earned themselves an ass-kicking. He spent years climbing the ranks to be a master sergeant in the Sorrento Royal Senate Guard, and now he has the top-tier gig. He's guardian to High Senator Sarah Brand, one of the leaders of the planet Sorrento. Life is going pretty good for Poe, and he's looking forward to a future of settling down and retiring from service. But all that changes when High Senator Brand receives troubling news. Shattered is the story of doing the right thing and the consequences of those actions, following Poe Targe, Sarah Brand, and their friends as they struggle to keep their planet safe. Shattered, a Sanguine Stars novella, is a short, action-packed science fantasy read that features political intrigue, fun action, and a touch of humor, all while setting the stage for everything to come in this universe. Visit nicholaswfuller.com to get your digital copy today. And now, enjoy the rest of this episode of SFF Addicts.
Well, before we dive into, because I'm really excited, actually, honestly, this is a great preview to the kind of cool insights and stuff that you guys have that we're going to talk through. The indie author experience and some of the cool stuff. But let's introduce our audience to you guys first. So I'd like for each of you guys to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself, tell us a little bit about your books. Just pitch your shit to our audience. Who wants to start? James, go first.
Okay. So I'm James Lloyd Dulin. I'm the author of the Malitu series. Series just wrapped up with Only a Grave Will Do that came out June 24th. So I'm really excited about that. In my daily life, I've worked in education for about 12 years. I have 2 kids, and they occupy my every waking moment that I'm not trying to write or working on something. So that's me.
Love it. Tatiana?
Yeah, my name is Tatiana Ovi. I write badass characters slaying dragons, and I'm the author of A Forging Rage Duology and the Champloo Mixes, which includes Sister Samurai, and my most recent release, which comes out June 19th, Return of the Sister Samurai. So I've also written short stories that have been published in various anthologies, including a short story that's nominated for the Locus Award and selected for the Best American Science Fiction and Fantasy 2025. I like to travel. I like martial arts, kicking people in the face, and and I know Japanese a little bit. I was terrible at it, but I wrote a book about it. So there you go. You can learn more about me on my website, tatianaobi.com.
Oh my gosh. Amazing.
I feel like if I said I like kicking people in the face, I wouldn't get away with it. And I also wouldn't sound as cool. Like it would sound abusive if I said it. When Tatiana says it, it sounds cool.
Yeah, it's like most people's faces are about knee level for you though, right, Ryan? Because you're 10 feet tall. So.
Yeah, it would actually, honestly, I don't think that I've stretched my hamstrings enough for that kind of, we were talking about that a while ago. One of my friends was saying, you're doing all these roundhouse kick kind of stuff. And I was like, yeah, I think I've gained a new appreciation for how genuinely flexible you have to be to do any of these martial arts. I can barely climb stairs, never mind kick someone in the face.
I go about shin level. That's where I stop.
There you go.
I was very lucky. I was pretty naturally talented at it, so I didn't have to work that hard for it.
Did James just sideways say that he only kicks children? It's like you stop around shin level.
Shin. Not kids. Kids.
It's like if they're around my shin, if they're around my shin, I'll kick them. If they're taller, I don't, because they could kick back.
That's the bar.
I mean, I pick my battles wisely, and so I go after the little ones.
Right? I'm only going to fight.
Only pick the fight you can end in one punch.
Yeah. That's my brand. I write books and I kick kids.
That's the clip.
There's your soundbite right there, MJ. That is that short soundbite on the YouTube Shorts. It just goes, I write books and I kick kids.
Right?
That's my brand.
Kids. But before we go fully off the rails, Ryan, could you introduce yourself and your books, please?
Yeah, sorry, I completely forgot. I was too focused on James's abusive tactics of selling books. So buy my books, boom.
If it works, it works.
My name is. Hey, look, I have nothing that I could possibly say to what you just said. But my name is Ryan Cahill. I'm the author of The Bound and the Broken, which is an epic fantasy series, and there's not much more to tell. I write books, have fun. This is cool. Dragons and shit.
You have a cool accent. You have a cool dog. There you go.
See, like where I'm from, this isn't a cool accent. It's just it's how we speak.
Yeah. We don't
So,
have cool
yeah, like,
accents in America.
That's
though,
why it's really
so-
cool. You go to America, and everyone's like, "Oh, you have a cool accent," and I was like, "Haha." Over here, I'm rare.
Amazing. Well, this episode we're talking about building your community, which is I'm super, super excited to have this chat with you guys because this is a skill, like selfishly, like this is a skill I need help with. So when I was writing questions, I was like, ooh, I'm just gonna pick their brains and steal all their tricks. But
Question 1, what color should MJ's lounge be? Wait, what?
But let's talk about community really broadly, first of all. So what does community mean to you as an indie author, or just, honestly, it's just a writer in general? And then, when we're talking about community, to me, I think we're thinking about like your devoted reader community rather than just, anyone who happens to pick up a copy of the book. So how would you, for you, where is that line between like where your community starts and where just like the larger reader base starts?
Well, I suppose I'll kick it off. I think because it's a big thing that I've looked at since when I very first started, and I tried to find the definition for it. And the definition for me is a community is the readership that talks to each other. So like you have your readership, but if you can develop an atmosphere, if you can develop a community, a place where those readers then autonomously talk to each other, like without your prompt, that is where things can grow organically. Because if things require your injection all the time, it will fall apart without you. And as soon as you disappear, it's not a community. It's just people standing around to hear you speak. But a community is when they're standing around to hear each other speak. And that's kind of where I got to. And that's the coolest place I think any author can ever discover, especially in like the fantasy genre, because there's just such a passion in fantasy that just isn't in all the other genres, because you have that inherent escapism, and the reason people are reading fantasy tends to be different, not always, but tends to be different than the reason they're reading a different genre. Like I found, like you're going to a place to get lost in something, and so let's get lost together. It's
Yeah, no, I feel you, Ryan. Because like sometimes like I'm like a proud mom with like at playmates at the playground, like, oh look, they're talking to each other. Look at them go. So there's always fun to like see that interaction between readers.
I think that's always fun when you see that kind of stuff happen online, and you almost feel like a voyeur watching. You're like, oh, I shouldn't be hearing this conversation. They're talking about me. But that's a really cool thing. I think I'm also kind of coming up in developing what community means, because I'm a newer author. I'm still working on creating what that community means for me. I think a big part of it is right now it's a lot of hand-holding and having those conversations direct with readers and trying to help initiate some of that community, and hopefully it keeps on going.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned defining the difference between like a casual reader, between a devoted reader community, and I guess I define that as in readers who are invested in your journey and invested kind of like in the author. So like for example, I like to read books. And like sometimes I read a book and be like, oh, that was nice, and I put it to the side. But other times I read a book and I'm like, oh, I need to know everything about this author. I need to know like what's their background, where they came from, like what else are they writing, what did they write? And it kind of goes beyond like just that one book where you're kind of shouting about the book and you're liking the book and you're like following the author and you just really kind of become invested in their journey. And that entry point to a community can be very different for different people. So like someone can become invested like seeing you on a podcast, seeing you on an interview, or someone else can become invested like you're talking about writing a book that you're starting to write. So there are actually many entry points into a community, and also being conscious of the fact of making multiple entry points into your community.
Yeah, I think that's really smart. The idea of there being multiple entry points. So just as like I don't know, dig a little deeper, is that like when they become invested more in like the author and kind of, or maybe even just the world, a specific series that you have maybe versus just one book? Or do you think there could be do you think it's possible to have a dedicated reader community around just a single book, or is that not necessarily right?
There's so many different types of community. Like a single book, you look at Name of the Wind, right? I know there's a second book, but the Name of the Wind created its own thing. Name of the Wind on its own, it's very possible to have that, but it's about trying to decide what you want to cultivate. So, like for me, with my readers, again, it was like my Discord is a big part, and actually my Reddit community is now starting to grow quite well. But the Discord, it was a place where, you know, you give them a space where they can talk, and that the space is insulated. That is about these books, okay? And there's different ways to then, you know, because we talk about it's almost a different conversation. We talk about brand and like you being your brand as an author and wanting to make your brand you and not your books, because when you make it you, then you increase the percentage chance those readers will come with you to your next series. Whereas if they make it just your books, you know, you can lose them. But in the community, it can be reasonably similar. And for me, gauging how much of yourself you want to give to that community can change that. So, like, I want them talking, but then what you forget, and what I forgot, what a lot of indie authors forget, because I'd say 99% of all indie authors have this kind of inferiority complex, which comes naturally when you come in, because you feel like, I know you might not feel it actively, but when you look at trad authors, there's this preconception that this person was chosen and I did it myself, and it creates this inferiority complex where you don't view yourself the same way that, say, for instance, you view Stephen King. You don't look at these authors, you view these authors as celebrities. Joe Abercrombie's a celebrity, Stephen King's a celebrity, he's obviously a massive example. But I always grew up that way, that the trad authors that I knew, that I was reading in the bookstore, these guys, they weren't real. They were celebrities. But what you forget is a lot of the time when a reader's reading your book, they're not thinking about how you were published. If they like the book, I didn't even know the indie author community existed until I decided to properly look into publishing. And so to them, to that reader, you are the same. So when you're giving your time in that community to just answer casual questions and have a chat, like, that's the word of mouth as well. That's them saying, hey, I read these books and the author's really cool. And well, if you are cool, if you're a dickhead, then it's not going to work very well. But like, there's so many different ways to build that sense of community, not just around your books, but around you as an author. But it just depends how much of yourself you're willing to give.
Yeah. And as you mentioned before, in regards to having community around a certain book. So I do have two different series, and two very different series. One's very epic fantasy and one's very anime. And a lot of times those communities aren't the same. There's a Venn diagram, and there are some people who have, for example, read Sister Samurai and have bought my previous books just to support me, not even to read them, never planning on reading the other books, but just to support me. And like, I definitely am kind of taking notice of those people who have gone through and read every book, but there is a community around both different series, because it does attract two different audiences. So sometimes when you have books with different audiences, sometimes it does kind of build like a Venn diagram of communities.
Right, like you're balancing too, because that is true. You have, there's overlap, but you know, not entirely the same audience.
Yeah, but that's a choice you make with your. It's a choice you make with your publishing tactics and your author brand, and what you want to do is, you know, balance your creativity. Hey, these two genres don't quite mesh together, but I'll be really sad if I don't write both of them, so I'm going to do it anyway. You know, that's just the thing you got to do. And if you write books that are tighter together in genre, then there's a much better chance you can keep the same community as a core community. But yeah.
Exactly. And that's why one thing that I've done to kind of maintain that is to establish a consistent brand. Like, my brand is basically like badass ladies carrying swords, right? And that's pretty consistent across all books, no matter what.
You put that on a spaceship or on the back of a horse, it's still a badass lady.
Exactly. So kind of establishing a brand that can cross over different subgenres is helpful.
Yeah, trying to find those touch points. Like, even like now, like, I've read epic fantasy, and say I just did a short story for Grimdark magazine, which is vampires and werewolves, and it's very much the vampires that don't sparkle and the werewolves that rip your heart out kind of thing. But it's finding the keystones. Like, what in epic fantasy do readers love? Is it the heart of the characters? Is it the type of description? If I want my readers to flow into this book, which has more of a horror overtone, do I make the undertone closer to epic fantasy so that when they go and read it, they find the familiar ground and are more willing to accept the newer ground? Like it's a craft thing. It's a community thing. You got to make those choices. I think the best thing any author can do, like any author, trad or indie, is be intentional. When you're making these choices, be intentional with them. And that's going to give you the best chance of, keeping readers in the same way, in the same path and in the same community, and, allowing to carry readers over.
I feel very much like I'm lagging behind because I don't know that I was intentional about creating a community. I was 100% focused on what I was writing and trying to figure out the stories. And I think that's a hard thing to do as indie authors, realize that there's two different parts to this. There's the business part, there's the crafting a community, there's the crafting a brand part, and then there's the authorial part, which in many ways is the easy thing because that's why we're all here. But then there's the forcing yourself to really think about what it means to help readers find you. And help readers create a community around you. And so for me, it was a lot of like listening to other authors who had done it before, trying to kind of follow some of these blueprints that are out there. Like I had no idea how to write a newsletter or any interest in writing a newsletter, but I learned a lot about it because I was following, Ryan and other authors who are doing it. I signed up for so many newsletters just to see what I could glean from reading other people's. And so I think that's a hard thing as a creative sometimes to do, is like, that's not the creative part of the job. That's not why we're necessarily here, but it is what's going to bring people to the part. It's going to bring people to your work. And so you got to put in that effort as well.
I think it's like, that's probably the best thing you can do with anything in the publishing field and in any field, is find the people that are doing well in the way that you want to do well. Because obviously success is defined by different things, and find out why that's happening. So when I started, people always talk about like reviews and all these numbers of reviews on books. And so the first thing I did was I went to the genres on Amazon that I knew I was in, and I looked at the books that had the highest number of reviews, not just the highest number of reviews, because what I'm looking at was reviews. So there has to be a reason that they have a disproportionate amount of reviews to other books. And so I bought them all, and I read them all, and I read the front matter and the back matter. And I noticed that there was a difference between the books that had a huge amount of reviews and the books that didn't. And there was a lot of small things that a lot of authors forget. All the ones that had loads of reviews asked for them. In the back of the book, they had a personal, heartfelt note explaining to readers why reviews matter. Because I know when I wasn't an author, I didn't leave reviews because that celebrity author doesn't need my review. They drive 5 Lamborghinis. Like, of course they don't need my review. And then obviously you get to the other end of it and you realize, okay, maybe that was a little bit hasty there. Like, maybe they only own single figures in the Lamborghinis. And so it was one of those. I've had so many emails from readers kind of, and genuinely, who have emailed in going, hey, I finished the book and I'd never left a review before, but I didn't realize how important they were. So I left them. And, the more emails you start to get, the more those types of emails come through as well. And it's just really cool to see that. And you were saying, James, about like it not being the creative field, the creative part of it. But for me, what I've found is as long as you can find a way to put the enthusiasm in, you can turn anything creative. Like that newsletter for me was about showing my readers what I'm like. This is my opportunity to show them who I am. So if I just write a few paragraphs and say, buy this book, it looks the same as anything they get. But if I am as stupid and as stumbling in my words and as randomly sarcastic in my newsletter as I am in real life, then maybe they might see a bit of me. And that's creative fun. That's writing. And so I found trying to make these things like the things that I like to do made it a lot easier for me.
I actually have an interesting counter to what you mentioned about reviews, because in my first series, I did ask for reviews at the end of the book. But in Sister Samurai, I did not, because the nature of the book is just very unapologetically itself, and is very unapologetically very anti, don't care what you think. But it breeds a lot of discussion, and it is my most reviewed book because it breeds a lot of discussion. And I do not ask for reviews in the back of that book whatsoever, but people come and
There's no one path for anything.
there's no one
path
path
for anything. No, absolutely not.
Well, and so let's talk a little bit. Oh, go ahead, James. Sorry.
I was just going to say that I find the authors that find the most readership and the most reviews and things like that are always the ones that stick to authenticity, because readers and communities can so easily sniff out somebody who's being fake. And so the moment that you're putting something on and you're not being yourself, it's very clear to readers that this is not who this person is.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk about the steps that you take to show that authenticity and to build your community. Because as Ryan mentioned, and as I genuinely believe in every area of writing, publishing, the whole thing, you talk to any two writers, no two of them have the same writing process, the same exact path to publication, the same exact approach to promotion. Like, everybody's doing something slightly different. And I think the best way to find your own path is to hear as many other paths as possible and then pick and choose what works for you. So what was your first step in building your reader community? Like, so when you had 0 followers, 0 subscribers to your newsletter, you're starting from the ground. What was your first step? What was the first thing you did?
I think the first thing that I did was I had no idea what the hell I was doing. And so I had a really cool proofreader who also wrote for FanFiAddict and was willing to put out my cover reveal and along with it an ARC request form. And so I just said yes to everybody who requested an ARC. And luckily enough, I had, Felix Ortiz designing my cover. So the beautiful cover brought in a lot of people signing up for that. And so by the time I had released my first book, I had over 50 reviews. And so I think just saying yes to everybody and allowing those people in, trying to make it as accessible as possible was my first step.
Yeah, I agree. I still joke about this with people, but I had absolutely no social media presence whatsoever when I published my first book. I mean, I'm somewhat of an introvert with social anxiety, and I didn't feel like dealing with people until I had to. So that said, I didn't begin with no community though. I did have a lot of people in my life who rallied around my dream of becoming a published author. So from friends to family, from community members, just like the people around me that kind of just really rallied and like amplified it out there. And then again, what James said, the second place was a good cover. Like, when you're nobody, a good cover is in many ways art in and of itself can be that first entry point to gain a lot of interest. So that helped. That helped a lot.
And can I just say, it's not just good cover, and it's something the Sister Samurai has really done really well. It's the typography. There's a lot of authors that I know who will get amazing covers, pay a lot of money for these beautiful pieces of art, and then the typography does not match the level of polish that the cover does. And it's a weird juxtaposition that can put a lot of people off. And I just remember I saw the cover a while ago for Sister Samurai, and it has the kind of brushstrokey, I'm trying to remember it exactly, but I just remember looking at it going, that's a really damn nice cover. I think Adrian showed it to me as well. Yeah, it's really cool. And I think, yeah, for me, like when I started, it's the exact same as like what James has said as well. It's about, I put it as readership over money. I was working a full-time job, so like writing was not my income stream. So I wanted to be, I think the biggest one for me is preparation. So 6 months before I launched, I sat down and I said, all right, I need to know what the hell is going on to kind of have some idea. So I just spent about 6 months just researching everything I could, different mailing lists, website providers, and what best way to do stuff. So I set up my mailing list. I made sure that was all in my ebook so that I had a net ready. Because, if 10,000 readers buy your book in the first week and you have no way to capture them, you just lost 10,000 readers for your next book. It's great for your first book, but if you can't ever contact them again and you're only relying on Amazon sending them something, it makes it harder. So I did that. And then 2 days after I launched, I sent my book for free for 5 days. And then I got all the newsletter builders and I gave away like 10,000 free copies of my book in the first 2 or 3 days. With the concept that even if 10% of them read, now 1,000 people who've read the book, and if I believe in my content strongly enough, hopefully a large portion of them will like it and they'll stay. And now all of a sudden I have more readers. And so that's what I did with that. And it thankfully worked out really well. It was just a case of trying to prioritize getting people into my book. I needed a readership. How do I get one? Okay, give the book to as many people and hope they actually look at it. And yeah. But it's like James mentioned about authenticity. And then when Tatiana was talking about the different ways of building reviews, and we're saying like there's no one path to everything. I always look at these things as there's 100 ways to do stuff, but there's core values that almost every author that I have met who is doing like in air quotes well, like has, and like James mentioned one of them in authenticity. And it doesn't matter what way you are, but if you're authentic about yourself, your readership can see that. And that's one of those core values to me that resonates with people. And a lot of them tend to have quite a high level of kindness as well. And then you will have someone like, say, for instance, like Larry Correa, who does not have kindness, he has something else. But that intensity of what he has brings his readers in. So it's just, I don't know, like having that strength of purpose in what you want to do and having the authenticity as well when you're building that readership can really help.
Yeah, and I'd say I had probably had a little different path than Ryan and James in regards to kind of giving my book to everybody. I did it a little different because a lot of my books aren't mainstream. They're very targeted, very specific audience. So I went in with intentionality, very targeted communities. For Sister Samurai, very targeting the blurred community, anime communities, like going to a lot of these communities I'm a part of, and just being very targeted on who I build my audience with, because I know where they are.
Classic epic fantasy, which has a real commercial marketability, and it didn't matter to me. But that's like the really smart thing to do. If your book is a little bit more targeted, once you cast it too wide a net, you start bringing in readers who won't like it, and that can give like a bad impression at the start. Yeah, that kind of intentionality is always really cool.
I think part of the thing is we're saying community like it's one thing, but there are so many communities, and some of them are overlapping, and some of them are very niche. And so I think when we're talking about finding your community, it's also about like really honing in on who you're talking about, who is your reader, and understanding that reader that's going to really lend or who your book is really going to lend itself to. And so you don't want to, as Ryan was saying, I'm not looking for people that are really into, I don't know, romantasy, because there's no romantic plot line in Malitu. And so they're going to be very disappointed if they start getting into my book. Whereas if I'm after more of a classic fantasy or even a literary fantasy kind of world, that's much more of a niche community, that literary fantasy community, but they'll fall in love with my writing because that's kind of that's what it's designed for.
I will say, funny enough, like Fourth Wing is probably the best thing that happened to epic fantasy and to my fantasy, but seriously. And it's one of those where when it's a catch-22, like you want to be intentional about your marketing and who you're going for, but also understand that your preconceptions aren't always right. So like so many romantasy readers and romance readers, found Fourth Wing, found the elements that they love in romance. And then when they were looking for some recommendations, saw something else with a dragon or something else, had a read and went, oh, I do love romance. I love some of the smut and some of the erotica, but I actually kind of just love dragons and shit too. And they didn't realize it. Like I know in Ireland, like growing up, loads of girls were kind of pushed away from fantasy because that's the boys' nerdy thing. And then they got a little bit older and they were like, wait, fuck that shit. And then they read this book and they were like, oh, wait, you mean you were telling me I wouldn't like this thing that I clearly love? And I found that happening a lot. Like in that romantasy section, a lot of the romance readers are starting to really find fantasy. They hadn't read a lot of it because they were just kind of, that's not my genre. And then they started reading it and they're like, wait, it has the same, really good fantasy, has the same core aspect in the characters. It has deep, complex, rich characters, which romance actually builds its genre on. You have to have those. When you're having a really similar happy ever after style plot, the characters have to be good. So that's what romance readers grew up on, is really strong character writing.
Yeah, it's a great gateway book. And
that was a tangent. Sorry.
But like building the fantasy readership is always a plus, right? Like, you know, a rising tide lifts all boats. It really does.
Yeah.
100%.
Well, and I think that goes back to the kind of, because I mean, even I've like experienced that a little bit, right? Where I get people that like their entryway into fantasy was SJM, Sarah J. Maas. Mm-hmm. They read Throne of Glass, and then they are comping my books to Throne of Glass, not because there's any spice or romance, but just because it's fantasy featuring a badass assassin lady. You know what I mean? And it's like,
if you can take out the schlongs and dongs and the plot is basically the same, you can compare.
Right, then you can still love it. And so I'll ask people when they say, oh, I really love Sarah J. Maas. I'll be like, okay, what is it about it? And you know, like to Ryan's point, don't discount it. And that comes back to, I think, James's point from, you know, initially, which is just say yes to all the opportunities, right? Like when you're building that community early on. And, you know, you've mentioned there are multiple communities. And I think part of that comes down to like different platforms that exist. Like Ryan, you've mentioned a little bit already, Discord, and you've mentioned Reddit. There have been mentions of social media and newsletters and all of these things. So I want to steal all of your methods, guys. Which platforms have you tried? Which ones have been most effective for building your community? Have you tried any where you're like, man, I heard I'm supposed to be on TikTok, but I hated it, right? Like, just give me all the scoop.
Good old tickety talk.
Right. I definitely recommend kind of trying everything and seeing what works for you and what works for your community, because different platforms might do better depending on subgenre as well. For example, like a lot of fantasy readers are over on TikTok, so it might be beneficial to be over on TikTok depending on like what genre you're writing. But like it can definitely be overwhelming. So what I tend to do is I set goals for myself. So for example, I'll be like, oh, this year I'll focus on TikTok and I'll build that platform and I'll see how it does. Or this year I'm going to be more consistent with my newsletter and kind of just really see what works, what brings me joy. I didn't really like really big Discords because I found them to be too overwhelming. So I failed at those.
I have quite strong opinions on this for communities, and it's like, for me, the social media apps are amazing, all right, but they tend to naturally create microcosms, and so like you'll see people on Twitter where people are Twitter famous, and they don't realize, I'll see these indie authors, oh my God, these guys are so big, and you realize that the top 1% of indie author, you've never heard their name because they're not on Twitter. They're on Amazon. And I think they're great. And it's almost like a different conversation. Like, which social media do you go to market and to do this? And you can build communities on them. People build really strong communities. But I think where my strong opinion comes in is I never want to build too largely into a community that I have no control over. So like with Discord, and one of the things, and I'm not great with Discord in regards to like all the interaction, because now that my Discord's bigger, it's hectic as shit. And I come on, I'm in a different time zone and it's like 274 messages. I just fucking do not enter general chat. But it's what I got to realize was that like, it's not for me. It's for all these lovely lunatics to get together and do their thing. And it's non-algorithm based. So they're not going to, Discord has no control over stopping these people seeing my announcements, my messages. That's an important thing. And that's why for me, like for the community, like, and I'll push it to like every single indie author in the world, is like a newsletters should never be a thing that fades in and out. It should be your core foundation. Because when I started, I almost didn't do one because I like never open newsletters because I just don't. I think a lot of authors are the same. And then it did take someone to kind of go to me, yeah, but you are not opening your newsletter, you're sending it. It's these other people who are opening it, and they're not you. And a big thing for me was, no matter what happens, if Facebook collapses, if Twitter collapses like it has, and all these people who had huge communities, they're not gone. and you can carry them, and the platforms you're engaging with them on a day-to-day basis can be moved around. Like I have multiple like 70, 80 plus year old like nannies in my Discord server, because they messaged, they're like, I don't know what Discord is, how do we get on, what do we do? And they got into it and they're like, oh, this is fun. People can do that, and like they'll move into it, but they contacted me through the newsletter. And there's an unbroken chain of communication between you and your reader there. I have such strong opinions on it. It's like it's the only thing you can control. It doesn't get taken away. If your newsletter provider collapses, you just take your email list and put on to a different provider. It's yours. You have the list. And so for those platforms, I feel so goddamn strong about it. Like the other social media stuff, yeah, it's almost a different topic. It can be the same topic. Some people, like that guy Luke Bateman on TikTok, just built this really, really like instantaneous community, because he's like a sexy Australian farmer dude, and people dig that, and that happens. But like if TikTok gets banned in the US tomorrow, his community's gone, like it did, and a lot of authors have seen tastes of this with TikTok and then with Twitter, and so that's why for me, like with Discord having a non-algorithm based system, and then Reddit is the same as well. It's a non-algorithm based system. Although I have a love-hate relationship with Reddit, but the mailing list is the only thing you control. And that for me is where I need the core of my community to be, because at the end of the day, when I launch a book in 2 years or in a year, I need to be able to tell them right away it's there and it goes into their inbox. Sorry, strong opinion. I went off on that.
Good. That's why you guys are here, so you can share your strong opinion.
Yeah. And like, I agree, because we are living like in a time where so many different platforms are imploding on.
We are living in unprecedented times.
I'm so tired of it.
And like audiences are fragmenting and everything. And one thing that newsletters are important, but one thing I do want indie authors to think about is sometimes we do get obsessed with being online a lot, and I suggest to go outside. Like I live in a very big metropolitan area, and I know that's not everyone's situation, but there's a lot of local bookstores around me. There's a lot of libraries. There's a lot of book events, and just going out in person in your community, talking to people, networking with people, you would be very surprised how many doors had opened and like what comes out of it. Like just people in person, like go talk to people outside.
I try and get to as many conventions. I obviously live in New Zealand, so it's not the same access, but like getting over to the US, to Worldcon this year, to DragonCon, to actually outside of the professional thing, it's a mental health and job fulfillment thing to be able to get outside and speak to people and kind of understand that you're not just sitting in a room alone. It's a really special thing. Like there's indie authors of all different levels will be at like DragonCon later this year and Worldcon, and trad authors, and a lot of the time, like 99.9% of the time I've been there, every single one of them just mingle. It's just a swimming pool full of people who love fantasy, and nobody cares about anything else, and it's really refreshing, really cool. And like Tatiana was saying, you just have no idea what kind of connections you're going to make. If you go in there with a business cap on and a logo on your t-shirt, you probably might not make as many because people will know what you're trying to do. But if you go in trying to make friends and talk to people, those things, it depends on the area you're in or what you're doing. Obviously at a book signing, you should be trying to sell your books. But yeah, it's in person is really, really cool. I think a lot of authors maybe don't get the chance to do it, and that's a shame.
And I think that comes back to the whole authenticity thing. Like you're saying, if you're showing up looking to network in a way that you're looking to use people to advance, nobody's going to want to talk to you. Nobody's going to want to actually back you and continue that relationship because you're showing an inauthentic version of yourself. And I think it goes to the same for social media. Like I see a lot of authors on TikTok doing videos about how to be an author. Like authors are not your readership base. And if they are, then your readership base is going to be very small. So if you're just doing social media posts about how to be an author and how to write a book, then you're really limiting yourself. You want to talk to people about the things you're interested in and that brought you to your book. So if you're really interested in Game of Thrones and that's what inspired you, talk about Game of Thrones. Talk about the dynamics in Game of Thrones that really worked for you. Talk about how that compares to what you're doing in your book. But don't talk about, on a craft level. I really think readers don't care. The readers, for the most part, do not care about the fancy authorial terms you want to use or telling people how to write a book, because that's not why they're there to read your book. And so I think thinking about what drew you to fantasy and being able to communicate that in an authentic way with the readership, whether in person or online, is very important.
See, on that, like I would say it depends. So on public social media, you're completely right. 100%. Like it is about, it's part of like authors understanding that they physically, the person that they are, the things that they say is their brand. And when you're on social media, a reader's first impression of you is always often going to taint or polish or just touch their continuous ongoing impression of you. When the first thing they see online. But when you create your own, you were talking about different types of communities, and that's kind of the important thing is there's an author community on Twitter, there's an author community on TikTok, there's a fantasy community, but your community, the one you're building, is separate itself as well. And when you're in your community, they are the readers who want to know about this stuff. So like I wouldn't put like craft things on Twitter. But if I go into my Discord and I have these readers and they're talking about the books and they're interested in doing this and they want to. If I'm sitting down and I go, oh, well, actually, I made this choice because if you look at it this way, this character is actually taking a trait from their father. They seem completely unreasonable. When you look at it, they actually don't know. They struggle with death and how to place blame. And if you look back, you can see the undertones previously. And the readers who want to care about that, not everyone does, all right? But the readers who do, that is how you get a fan into a super fan. That's how you get a reader who is really, they're caring more about how the craft impacted the story that they love. And that's what I've found. Like when you're in your dedicated community, they do want to know more about how you write the book, how you approach, especially if you love that book. If you love these books and you love this world, they want to know what you did. And it is different. Like I wouldn't be doing that on Twitter or on Instagram or on TikTok. Well, some people can build around it on TikTok because of the video-based content. But yeah, it depends on the community. Is it your distinct community or is it a wider fantasy community? But that is that's what happens a lot on Twitter. It's authors shouting at authors. They're shouting at authors and you're kind of going, buy my book. And the other author's like, well, if you buy my book, I'll buy your book. And then it becomes this thing.
Yeah. Recently, speaking to what you're saying, Ryan, I've seen engaging with super fans. One platform that I've seen that has been very successful is Substack. I've seen authors use
Substack and Patreon have been a huge shift in the last few years.
Yeah. Now, who knows? When you publish this, it might change, and it might be something different.
Right in the next month, Substack has died, right?
But that's a different. I suppose it actually is on community, like with Substack and with Patreon. Like it's a different level of those readers, the readers who want that stuff. And I was recently talking to another author, and he was contemplating putting the Patreon together. He's like, I don't know, like if what I'm doing with these things, what will I give them? What will I do? So the thing about it is you're upfront. People will pay if they want to pay. That's the point of it. So if you're sitting there saying, hey, I'm going to have extra information on this or that, or I'm going to write these short stories, or I'm going to do this, there are people who will pay for it because they want it. They want to support you and they want to see the content other people don't care about, and why not give it a go? If it works for you, it works for you. And it's another community. And though that community feels like those Patreon communities and Substack communities can get really, really hardcore dedicated because these are the people who are trying to make sure your journey happens. Like it's a really cool little, obviously Patreon still controls a lot of it, but it's a really cool little space.
Yeah. Well, and that's so I come from my day job is in the world of marketing, and this whole thing is kind of calling back to a very a core concept of modern marketing, which is like this idea of warming up your audience. So when you're talking about going to Twitter, going to wider social media. That's a cold audience. They don't know you. They don't like you yet. So yeah, you're going to want to talk about things that are more focused on them. So what books might they like? What might bring them to this and that and the other thing, and making that connection. And then as they warm up, you could talk a little bit more about you because they already care. Which I think is really
your
fascinating.
approach needs to change depending on how hot or cold the audience is.
And it sounds like oftentimes, those different audience temperatures might be on different platforms. I think most of us as writers are on multiple platforms, whether that's social media platforms, whether that's balancing a newsletter with a Discord, with a Reddit community, right? That can be a lot to manage. It can be stressful, especially when you're trying to manage writing as well, especially if you also have a day job or children or both or whatever. How do you guys balance being present enough across your multiple platforms to maintain your communities without burning out?
I think part of it is about selecting what works for you, because I enjoy TikTok. I think that it's fun to put out some videos, but I know other people hate to be on camera, and the only thing they can put on TikTok is, a picture of their book with a little music in the background, which doesn't really get views.
It feels like burning my eyes if I try and do those videos. Yeah.
And so if it doesn't work for you, don't do it. You don't want to overwhelm yourself, especially when Elon took over Twitter. There were about 8 different Twitter copycats that came out, and they're like, okay, you gotta get on Mastodon, and you gotta get on Blue Sky, and you gotta get on this other one. And honestly, if you tried to do all of them, you wouldn't have time to write. It would be ridiculous. And so, you pick and choose your battles. You pick what's working for you. You center it around something like a newsletter, but you also reach out through the platforms that work for you in your daily life. And that's the way I found to actually manage it for myself, because I can definitely be overwhelmed with social media and feel like I'm just speaking into a vast void, and there's so many more important things to speak about. So what does it matter if anybody wants to talk about my books? And so that can be a mindset that you really get into on social media. And so you got to figure out how to manage it for yourself.
Yeah. For me, I'm honestly not one of those authors that has the energy to keep a community engaged 24/7 throughout the year. As Ryan said, it is important to figure out, how to keep a community going even when you're not there and you're absent. And that is definitely something that I'm kind of working on right now, and building that type of community. One of the things that has been helpful for me right now is kind of to establish a pattern and be consistent with that pattern. So for example, generally, I will make sure to post or something and to send out regular newsletters, but for 3 months leading up to a book coming out, I'll do a very hard pre-order campaign, and kind of let my readers know, look, this is happening. Are you guys ready? Okay, let's go. And so in many ways, kind of bringing everyone together for this one mission and one purpose can build community even further. Because no one really likes shouting about books by themselves, but when several people are shouting about a book, they feel like they're a part of something. So in my head, I think of pre-order campaigns as one big party, just throwing a party for everyone. So people come, they have a good time, and then we all go home at the end of the night. So I'll see you again for the next party. And this gives me space to recharge, and engagement for me feels more like a wave. So there's crests and troughs, but it's more manageable for me, especially considering how do I make this manageable in regards to a long-term writing career that I want to keep doing and make sure it maintains and be stable. So I don't know, this is an experiment I'm doing currently. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the core thing. It depends on the type of community you build. There's some people who've built large Facebook-based communities and stuff, and they require more interaction, but they can give you a lot back. But one of the things, like Tatiana was saying there, that I was talking about earlier, is when you're defining the difference between our general readership and a community, and for me, that community is a readership that talks to each other. And so building these readerships that are self-sustaining, or these communities that are self-sustaining, it takes time, and it takes more investment at the start because you need to make sure the conversation is going. And then as you build the community, as more people are in there and as different things pop up, and it depends on the types of book you write as well. If you leave a lot of things ambiguous, if you have hints and you have Easter eggs and things for people to talk about, it slowly builds. And it's the hard thing is, I think, for anyone, starting any community, like starting any social media, is the hardest point. All right. And that's when 95, and I'm obviously making that percentage up, % of people quit. When you do something for the first 6 months to a year, you see almost no return. And that is when most people quit. Because if you don't see return, it's hard sometimes to make that investment. And like with Twitter, I think I had no likes on any Twitter post for like 8 months. Not a single one, like nothing. Nobody interacted with anything. And then slowly there was 2. And then there was 5. And then there was 10. And now I usually get a few hundred on anything I put on Twitter. I never get those crazy viral, like 20,000 stuff. But it takes the time. And like, it's hard because I know, like James was saying, that if something doesn't work for you, don't do it. I think there's a point with it though too, where stepping outside your comfort zone and finding a way to do those things can be extremely important. And it is usually the person who, when they, in this instance, when they see that hard thing and decide, okay, there's a difference, obviously, trying 50 different social media platforms, none of them working for you, and driving yourself insane. There's a balance to everything. You know, you don't want to be burning yourself out, and it's incredibly easy to do so. But sometimes it's after that point. It's like you can push yourself to breaking on a social media, and your turning point is here. And so many people quit here. And it makes sense because you're not getting the feedback. And I found on everything, on Instagram, on my newsletter, like I was getting like 3 subscribers a month, and now I get like 1,000 to 1,500 every month. And it was like nothing. And it was over the course of 2 years, I still was like almost nothing. It was crawling and crawling and crawling and crawling. And then there was just a point where it just tipped. And it would have been so easy to stop that whole time. And it's hard because I have no words to tell someone how to notice when that's going to happen. But it's just like one of those things in life, you know, you'll find your keys as soon as you stop looking. And so, I don't know, it's real hard. It's almost a skill to learn. To learn something that, like, I know TikTok will not work for me. I will not do the videos. I know that I don't have the strength of character to force myself to when I look into that lens, my whole body wants to just explode. I'm on TikTok to respond to things, and I put a couple of videos up, but I can never do the like dancing and pointing at stuff and whatnot. So I know my limits, and it's taken a while to get there. But, you know, learning to push through some of those things and trying to see the worth at the end of it, I think, is extremely important when you're trying to build a career as an author. And I think that's actually the biggest clarification for any panel or anything you can do, is all of this advice completely depends on what you want from this. If you want to turn writing into a single income career, the things I would advise you to do could be very different than if you want to, you know, write books, great books, sell some books, and you don't mind if it becomes a career or not. If it does become a career, amazing. If it doesn't, you're happy doing what you're doing. That's a very different path to someone who is like, I am making this a career. It's make or break for me. Like, it's what you want from something changes how you need to approach it, in my head.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I think that there's several kernels of wisdom in everything you guys just said, because it is about what your goals are. If your goal is to make it a career, it's kind of like, that's to me just the difference between something being a hobby and something being a career or a job in general, is being willing to push through those periods of discomfort. However,
Yep.
To your point, I think actually all 3 of you, Tatiana, all of you said something to the effect of like, this platform works for me, or I really enjoy doing stuff on this platform, and I hate this one. That's the other piece too, because it's like there's no one path forward. And I think the key to being able to continue pushing to that breaking point where it tips, breaking point makes it sound like a bad point, tipping point where it tips in a good way. Your breaking point is
on social media. It's not
the
breaking
wrong
you.
platforms. Yeah, no, but it's the key to it is choosing a platform you actually don't mind creating for, right? I bet you wouldn't have kept tweeting for 8 months if tweeting and you got no reactions required
If
you to
someone
sit
tells
and
you
look
there's
into a
one social
camera.
media platform that you need to be on, chances are they're wrong.
Yeah.
All right, everyone will always tell you the one platform you need to be on, and it doesn't mean that it's the platform that's going to work like that for you. Just because some person sells 100,000 books on TikTok and the TikTok shop last month doesn't mean you're going to sell 100,000 books in a TikTok shop next month. So you got to balance it.
Yeah.
Everyone will
I
always
love
tell
that.
you the amazing thing happening.
Yeah. Well, let's. Oh, go ahead.
No, to say, but it's funny because I'm the complete opposite. Like, I thrive when I have no views because then it just makes me more unapologetically myself. And then I
pressure,
turn
bitches.
around. Yeah, no pressure. And then I turn around. I'm like, who are all these people? Why are they liking this? Why? So I just stumble my way into it.
You're like, no, read my books, but don't look at me, please. Well, let's talk a little bit about challenges. I feel like we've kind of touched on it a little bit. In some of the, but like
We've touched on a little bit of everything at this stage.
I know, right?
Yeah.
But let's talk about the biggest challenge. Like for each of you, what is the biggest challenge if you had to like kind of narrow it down to one that you've had building and or maintaining your reader community? And like, are you still struggling with that? What do you do to mitigate it? How did you overcome it? Like any words of wisdom as well?
I think one of the first things that comes to mind is you'll have a lot of people that do these giveaways to build out a newsletter list. And a lot of the people that sign up for those are automatic unsubscribes from your email list. So I've had giveaways that have gone amazing and I've gotten a couple of thousand new subscribers. And then immediately the next newsletter I send out, I get flags from my company saying there's too many unsubscribes. And I think that's partly because there's a nature with these giveaways where a lot of people are just signing up for the giveaway and they have no interest in being a part of your newsletter. And so I think there can be a lot of danger in those like grow your readership quick tips that you get from different authors because it can help in some ways, but in some ways it's going to be a challenge, and you need to kind of realize the shadow side of some things, that not everything that you do is going to come with some kind of unforeseen consequence as well. And so just being aware of those unforeseen consequences and trying to understand that when you're getting into something.
Can I ask a real quick question on that one? When you did that, did you have an onboarding sequence for those new readers? For those new subscribers? Did you have a specific one just for the giveaway? So
yeah, I had a specific one just really for the giveaway. And multiple authors on the same giveaway had the same issue of just a large portion of that giveaway just unsubscribing from all newsletters immediately.
Oh, yeah. That one. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Sarah.
But, I've seen that. Like, it's not just newsletters. Sometimes you'll have, like, social media follow trains, for example. But I've found that if you grow your audience, sometimes there's a difference between growing it fast and quick and trying to get the numbers than growing it authentically. Because growing it authentically, you continue to get that engagement, and it continues to lift you up as you continue to grow. So definitely always authentic readers and authentic engagement. As James said, sometimes those get quick audience doesn't work.
Yeah, so it's MJ who said it as well. It's the hot and cold, like when you have a warm reader or a cold reader, and when you're bringing them on. And I know I've done a lot of those when I was starting out as well, and I have filtered. I probably kicked like 6,000 people, more than that, off my newsletters over this last while. But I always looked at it as a case of I'll get them, 1,000 people will sign up, 600 will leave, at 400 new subscribers, go team. And I did try and do a specific one for it. Is just kind of like they'd get an email like that day on top of it, just being like, hey guys, you signed up to this newsletter, and just to let you know, I'm only going to send out this amount per month, whatever it is. Hopefully you stay. If you don't, life goes on, have a great time. And then you get another one 3 days later with like another free book or whatever it is. And it depends. You're always going to lose huge amounts regardless. And those follow trains are the same. They're mad. People with like 100,000 followers on Twitter and get like 2 likes per post, and it's like, well, that's because none of them actually know who you are. See, it's the hard one.
Yeah, right. The difference between, I think that's really great insight. There is the difference between having a large community and actually having
An
a
engaged
dedicated
community.
Yeah.
An engaged small community is much better than an unengaged large community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Going back to the question in regards to just like biggest challenges. I know, at least for me, my biggest challenge is myself.
You're a delight. You stop it.
I mean, I do like have pretty high social anxiety, so like a lot of attention, a lot of pressure does make me like physically sick sometimes.
That's why you learn to roundhouse kick people.
Yes, exactly.
You're like, get away.
But the way that it helps is basically treat marketing like a job. And to be consistent with it. I post during the week. I don't post during the weekends because that's my time. Every morning I get up at the same time and I respond to comments. I engage. I'm very consistent about it, so I can maintain that rhythm and maintain that routine. I post, I let it go. Don't become emotionally invested on like how well this post does. Another thing is, I don't like being the center of attention. And because of that, in regards to building my community, and I try to build my community with kind of like a purpose and a mission beyond just myself. I do care a lot about raising visibility for other Black and BIPOC indie authors. And that's something that I care a lot about. I care about building tables. I care about building spaces. And I want to invite people to build something with me. Because, what's the point of building community if, we're not building structures and institutions to last? I shouldn't be the only Black indie author you know. If you follow me, you will know more. That is my mission and that's my purpose. So kind of having a purpose beyond just myself motivates me to kind of push through like all of the challenges thrown at me from the industry and from myself.
I love it.
Me, I'm the last one left.
You are. You're up.
Yeah, there's so many challenges. I think one for me was learning that the larger your reach goes, the more people who are not your target audience will creep into what you're doing. And also, like, negativity will be proportional to success. And it's something that I think it was hard for me to deal with and me to learn. And I've kind of had to develop like skin as thick as a lizard. Because one email or one message when you're at the start of your career, if you're selling, 100 books or 200 books or whatever number of books, when you move forward, if you are now selling 10,000 books or 100,000, whatever it is, that one message will become 20, will become 50, will become 100. And it was learning that as you grow your community, it's not always going to grow in the same way. Like, you're going to be exposed to more negativity. And in this industry, there are two sides. There's more than two sides, but in this, for the purpose of this, you'll have your really supportive, strong community, but understanding that will always come with the people who then will want to tear it down because they want to see it torn down. And those people exist. And you can see it like with, say, for instance, Daniel Green and what happened on YouTube a while ago. There were people that I was watching, and I didn't say anything, I just watched people who you could tell have just been sitting there waiting for something bad to happen to him and waiting for him to take a foot wrong. And all they wanted to do, there was like joy in hopefully watching it burn. And that's there. And that was hard on my end to kind of, you get exposed to it. Because as an author in general, like reading negative reviews, I know now, I literally, unless someone is like tagging me, I will only read 5-star reviews. Like, I go into Goodreads, I'll just filter. That's all I'm reading. Because my mental health, it's not because I don't appreciate the 4 stars or the other one, is because like when you're writing, like your mental health can be so fragile and can flip so easily. And I honestly can't afford to lose 4 days of writing because I read someone's horrible review. Or even like if it's a 4-star review, it's lovely. And they dug into something and had a really strong opinion on one thing. And then my brain fixates on that for the day. And I just couldn't afford it. And so that was hard for me to kind of learn and take into consideration when I'm looking at this stuff, that as your community grows, your level of exposure to those kinds of things will grow. And it's something that a lot of people will look and they'll say, oh, I want to have this. I want to have this many readers or this much community. And you got to understand it depends on the person. There was there's always a scandal on Twitter, but there was the scandal about there was an author who was complaining about a 3-star review, and that's a common one. And you go, yeah, but the problem here is you specifically, this individual person, if you do sell 100,000 books, you're going to have a lot of those fucking reviews. And you're going to have a lot of 2 stars and a lot of 1 stars. And if this is how you react to a 3-star, you are physically not built to deal with that level. Right now, you can work on it. But like with this mind frame, it's going to be very difficult mentally to cope with it. Because I know I've had some days where I look at stuff and I'm just like, man, I don't know if this is for me. It's hard. And that's a thing that you need to take into account when you're trying to build a career as an author or any public facing anything that's creative, where sometimes your self-worth can balance on the thing that you create. Is that the larger your exposure is, the larger your community is, the larger you build it, you just got to be understanding that it's not all going to be roses. That was difficult. That was a big challenge for me, trying to learn how to pull myself back in the right ways while staying present.
And I think that comes kind of with the dark side of authenticity. If you're being your authentic self online, you're putting your authentic self out there in your books and on your newsletter and things like that. So when people don't like the things you do, it feels like they don't like you because you're being yourself very openly.
Sometimes they'll also say, I don't like you.
Right? I was going to say, maybe they don't like you, but also not everybody has to like us. I don't like everybody. Yeah. Why should I expect all of them to like me,
Tell your brain that.
Yeah, I know. Well,
I agree with you, but my brain doesn't.
We're hardwired as people to focus on the negative, which makes sense. It's a survival mechanism, because if everything's hunky-dory, you're fine. You want to focus on the dangers and the perceived threats, and those can be perceived threats to the sense of self too. So that makes perfect sense. Yeah.
But that's not also me just as a thing, because I know sometimes when we talk about negativity like that, it can sound like trying to warn people off, say, well, actually, all these good things come with bad things. But it's actually more of a case of saying, it's not about don't do it because these things can happen. It's about it's important to be conscious of it as you push towards that thing, because you're going to have to face it. And if you want this as a career, if you want to build it, you're going to have to face it. You're going to have to stand up to it, and you're going to have to find a way to navigate it, because it will happen no matter where you are, who you are, the color of your skin, your sexual orientation. You are going to face these things in different proportions. There'll be people who experience it far more than others, and there'll be people who experience it different ways than others, but you're going to encounter it. And it's better to have an understanding, as far as I'm concerned, after going through different bits of it at a much lower level than a lot of other people, after going through it, that understanding it and being aware of it and preparing yourself for the fact that, hey, look, these things are going to happen, can make a big difference in your mental fortitude when it happens. It doesn't prevent it from happening, but it can hopefully allow you to deal with it a little bit better.
Yeah, and sometimes it takes practice. I think I came from fan fiction, and I got death threats over there. So
that's fucking brutal.
This is like a walk in the park so far.
Yeah,
some of the authors who write comic books for superheroes and stuff, they genuinely have to have security details around with them. There's characters, there's guys out there who you make Superman's son gay, and all of a sudden half of South Virginia, or whichever side of the Virginia I'm talking about, wants to go and kill you. There's a West one. Nobody, I don't know. There's one of the Virginians, okay?
The other Virginia.
Yeah, and if anyone's living in Virginia, I don't mean it, and I think you're lovely. I probably meant Arkansas, okay? But there's crazy stuff there, and my dog is now barking like crazy. Because I think someone's out in the garden and she loves people. And apparently barking is her love language.
Oh my gosh. Well, I think honestly, the whole message that I'm getting from a lot of this is that actually there's a lot of blessings in disguise if your community builds more slowly, right? I think everybody wants to be an overnight success. It sounds great. It sounds appealing. But those kind of build community quick schemes or things would come with a lot of challenges. To James's point, you might have that quick flash in the pan community that just leaves you, or to the points that you guys have been making here, it's you could kind of maybe slowly acclimate yourself to the negativity as it grows, and grow that thicker skin as your community grows. So yeah, I think that maybe that's an inspiring message where, okay, maybe it's taking a little while to build your community. Maybe it's taking a while to build those steady habits that Tatiana's talking about, to really, grow those habits to engage with the community. But that's okay, because it's going to be better for you in the long run, probably, if it builds more slowly.
It's actually George R. R. Martin did a panel. I can't remember how many years ago it was now, and this exact topic kind of came up where he was talking about
indie.
No, but at the time he wasn't selling as many books as he is now.
Yeah.
But the concept was Tatiana is now multiple colors. The concept was him saying how when the TV show came out, there's a difference between how many books he's selling, but the level of fame and exposure is astronomically different. At one point, you're making your money, you're selling your books, you're doing whatever you're doing, and you can just go about your life. But then the series came out, and all of a sudden you can't go for dinner, you can't go for lunch. You say hello on social media, and people just try to attack you. And he was saying when he found that level of fame, he was much later in his life. Like George was in his 50s or 60s. I remember when Game of Thrones initially found that kind of level of fame, and he was like, I had learned how to deal with it. It had built that way. Like before Game of Thrones, he wasn't a massive. He was a very big writer in in the Hollywood and other parts, but as a novelist, nothing like he is now. He's like, I took the time, and when he's finding that fame in his 50s, 60s kind of thing, he knew how to deal with it. And he was saying it made him have a large appreciation. And I'm equating this to our communities, not us. So a large appreciation for someone like Justin Bieber, who comes in and is just smacked with it straight away. That get rich quick, that get community quick thing. They're smacked with it before they have the time to learn how to deal with it and how that can affect them. And it's the same for me with communities. If your community explodes massively, you haven't learned how to deal with all the different positive and negative outcomes and ramifications of that. And as it builds slowly, you get that tiny bit of exposure. There's maybe something negative happens here, and you can deal with it and then come back from it. And you can do this and you can do that. You can have these tiny pieces of it. But if it explodes and you're just getting slapped in the face left and right with negativity and even positive stuff, huge, overwhelming numbers of people doing something, that can collapse. I've seen authors who explode real quickly, and then it just fades because they don't know what to do next. And it happens with trad sometimes as well. A lot of the time when someone spends 10 years writing a book and they hand it in to the publisher, and the publisher goes, amazing, we need book 2 in 18 months. And all of a sudden, you've gotten this dream, it's in your hands, and then you're like, I did the what do I do? But I just thought that was a reasonably good comparison, the way he talked about it, and the way how when someone experiences something essentially in their infancy, a huge explosion without exposure and how to deal with it, versus someone who has had decades to learn how to deal with this stuff. And it's the same with communities, building it slowly, building it robustly, and learning what your engagement level is going to be in that community before it overwhelms you is a good thing.
Yeah. And then also being mindful of your actions, because people are watching and your colleagues are watching.
They're watching and they're taking notes.
Yeah, on how you react to things. So it is very important.
I would also say on the just kind of another side of that, there's this side of the indie community that has this toxic positivity as well, that doesn't allow you to expose yourself to the negativity. So they want to just say everything is amazing, everything deserves 5 stars. Just be your amazing, wonderful self, and you don't kind of engage at all with the negative side of things, to the point where you're not inoculating yourself. You're not actually dealing with the dark side of some of this stuff, and you're just kind of blinding yourself to it, to the point where it's going to smack you in the face if it ever really makes it through that barrier. And so I think sometimes in the author community, we're not honest enough with each other about how tough some of this can be.
I don't know where you're going to say there, because for a second I thought you were going to be honest with each other about leaving reviews and stuff, and it's like a hard line that I have. I will absolutely never, ever, ever. There is not a point in my life where I'm going to leave a negative review for someone else's book. It's never going to happen.
Oh, no.
I was like, please don't say that, James.
No, because it makes me feel like I know that obviously I don't know every author in the world, but it makes me feel like I'm walking up to a coworker and being like, "You suck." Like,
it's not even that. It's just, who the hell am I to say that I know enough to tell another author how to write a book? Whereas, like, you just don't. Also, I just don't want to put that negativity out in the world. But you didn't say that. But I saw it building.
No.
I was like, oh no, please don't say that, James.
you're like, oh god.
But
Yeah.
taking this further, there's the reader community, but there's also other communities that you can build to support you. So I have a very close-knit author community that we read each other's work, we critique each other's work. I trust them. I trust them to give me good feedback, and just forming those really good critique circles so that you are ready for when you go. Those are the spaces. Those are those safe spaces where you can tell each other the truth and be honest. So it's very important to.
They're rare and they're precious.
Yeah, it's very important to build those spaces, because that's how you grow as a writer. That's really how you grow.
Yeah, I think sometimes we can kind of try to shield ourselves from too much, to the point where we don't allow ourselves to understand that there will be negativity along the way. And we don't allow ourselves the space to understand, like, we're going to have to deal with people that don't like our books. My books are not for every reader. There's no book that's for every reader. And if you expect
Lord of the Rings, I will fight you. No, I'm joking.
Actually, I just was on a podcast talking about this. My wife does not like the Lord of the Rings Peter Jackson trilogy.
Okay, no, that's actually debaucherous. I'm sorry. The books I can take. The movies where people hike. No.
The movies where people hike, and she will rant about how they're just 3-hour movies of people hiking, and then hiking some more, and then hiking some more.
But the scenery.
But the interviewer's face, it was Nicholas Fuller. He just kind of like died inside
like,
hearing me talk about this. He's like, how dare she? But like, nothing's for everybody. And I think until we understand that and allow ourselves to like deal with that, you're going to be in for some harsh realities when you do find community or you do find readership.
It's an interesting one because, and again, I think it's kind of, it goes off a little bit, but like, I genuinely, I don't know, unless it goes to really specific levels, I don't really believe in toxic positivity. Whereas I'm kind of like, that's kind of dealing with the same thing I said earlier about with these social media platforms. There's microcosms. Okay, so like, if everyone in that microcosm on Twitter is really positive, all right, that's still just a small proportion of things. So you'll see on Amazon, like, or on Goodreads, like, the reviews that are coming in. If you're selling your books and you're selling enough, and if that's what you're pushing to get, you're going to see the negative reviews are going to come no matter what. Whether they come from the people at the start, whether they come from people in the middle. If you are selling enough books, if you're getting enough reviews, they are going to come in. You're going to find them, no matter what. I suppose it depends on these communities that you build and how you bounce around it. I think the indie author community is broken into more segments than any of us really understand it is, and they're all in their own little segments. And sometimes it's less toxic positivity and more people only look in that circle. And that can be the difference for me. Like, being positive and trying to point out the good thing. It's different if someone goes, this book's great, and gives nothing on it. It's its own thing. But I think it's the fact that a lot of the time we find this comfort place, and we find this place, this small segment that we have on Twitter, and we don't look anywhere else. And it's about making sure that you're looking wider, making sure that you're understanding that the 10 people that you will constantly reply to on Twitter the whole time, there's a lot more to it than that. There's a lot deeper readership. Like, I know you talked about giving away arcs and not like, care, just give away as many arcs as you can. I believe that 100%, like, from the ground up. And some people turn around and start, I don't want to cannibalize my sales. I was like, Will White sold 1 million books every year for the last 5 years. You're not cannibalizing your sales. Like, he writes in progression fantasy, which is definitely considered more niche than a wider classic epic fantasy style, and still manages to sell 1 million books. So if he's selling 1 million books every year, there's a lot of readers. there's a lot of places to look. And I think we kind of forget as indie authors, as budding indie authors, that that readership you're looking for, that deeper readership, it's at the place where the books are sold, as opposed to on social media.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's close out or start to wind down with something a little fun, because we have talked a lot about like bad reviews and the dark side of community. Let's bring it back to the bright side of community. As we wind down here, I want to close out with each of you sharing, if you can remember, one particularly surprising, funny, touching, cool reader interaction, or like a creative way a reader has shown appreciation for your work. Did you get fan art? Did you get someone, whatever? I would just love each of you to share like one memory where you're like, oh my God, I had this reaction with this reader and it was awesome.
All right. Well, I have a fun story.
Yes, do it.
Tatiana, go.
So, as many know, like Felice Ortiz did the cover art of Sister Samurai, and then one day he messaged me and was like, "Oh, I'm reading it." I was like, "Huh?" It's very rare for a cover artist to actually read the book. And I was like, "Oh, okay. Hope you like it."
You get that worry,
and then, like
someone you really want to like it reads it, and you're like, "Please fucking like it."
Right? Like, oh God.
And then a couple of months later, randomly, he loved it so much that he made fan art of the story. Like, I have it on my Instagram, and I
when
bring it to me to all my signings.
To do art makes art
exactly
without you paying him. That's
yes, yeah. So the coolest story.
I love that.
How do you top that?
It's not a contest, it's all beautiful.
But we are ranking this from 1 to 3.
Okay, well, I'm aiming for third place right now. But I had this reader who was an ARC reader for my first book, and they were doing their first review ever. And so it's interesting when you're starting off a reviewer's career, if we call it career, because some people just kind of join a site and decide to do some reviews. And his initial review was on Twitter, and it was a profanity laden thread about how much he hated the villain and just how much life it gave him to hate the villain of the book. And it made me feel just so elated to see all the profanity in that thread, and then see that transition into a much nicer, more well-rounded professional review when it made it onto, I think it was FanFi or one of these other sites.
I love that. You're like, haha, I made you feel hatred.
Yes.
Oh, you love it when they have these high emotions.
Mm-hmm. Mission accomplished.
100%. But you tell us one, MJ. No, you tell us one.
Me?
Yeah, you're part of this too.
I'm part of this too. Okay.
I hear cool shit.
Well, I have my absolute favorite one, and this was my moment when my first book came out. It was not that popular. And I was crushed because I was oh no, I'm never going to be a bestseller, whatever. And then I had this interaction with a reader that made me go, I don't really care if I'm a bestseller because this is the type of interaction I want. And it was just a reader that DM'd me and told me that they'd been having a really rough year and they'd been really depressed, and that Reading Among Thieves was the first time they had laughed and felt like themselves in months. And I was right to the heart. I love it so much. So there you go. There's mine. Now you have to go, Ryan.
That's very nice. Anything where a reader feels that kind of emotion from your books is just a beautiful thing. I know I had one that will always stick with me. It's real funny. There's a reader in my community who's read the book series I think it was 7 or 8 times. It's probably more than that now. And it's a big series, and she's read it a lot, and she has a tattoo on her leg, and it just has some of the writing from the books, some of the language from the books, and it's next to a phoenix that the chick had gotten done previously. And she was saying that one day she was walking across the area in work, and she was wearing shorts, and you could see the tattoo, and she got back to her desk and she had an email from a colleague, and it was about a business thing, and they'd signed it off, but then they signed it off in the language from the books. And that was so cool. Like, so cool.
That's gold.
wow.
Like 2 of your readers, unbeknownst
Yeah, it just
to
happened
you
to-
or each other, finding each other in the wild.
Yeah, it's cool. It was really, really cool. And this was probably 2-ish years ago. So like, you know, I was only an author maybe like about 2 years at that stage. And I was just kind of going, the chances of that is astronomical. And it was just cool. It's really nice to see that when someone actually notices it and goes, "Oh my God, you like these things too."
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I love that. See, now we all
So many
feel warm
positives.
fuzzy because that was so beautiful.
I actually really feel the need to say, after you were saying, I realized that we focused a lot on the negative there, how positive and incredible the communities are, and how, like, for me, how important it is for maintaining, as myself, it might not be the same for everyone, but for maintaining that sense of drive and fulfillment in what I do, and understanding that, like you were saying just there, MJ, that the impacting people's lives and writing something that someone can find anything in is so incredibly special. And as an author, from a completely selfish point of view, you get to expose yourself to more of that if you have a community and you cultivate a community. Just really, really nice things, and they come from community. Yeah, I definitely don't want to leave anything on a negative note on those things, because the community is incredibly special, and having a chance to be able to build it and being able to see how your words and your stories have found a place in people's hearts is amazing. You know, no matter whether you've sold one book or whether you've sold 1 million books, I can imagine on either end, knowing that it meant something to someone is kind of the most important thing.
Yeah.
Well, that and paying the bills. So.
Yeah, and with a lot of my books, like, I write to give a lot of people the ability to see themselves in fantasy that usually don't, and, you know, to like have tearful people come to me and be like, "You're the author I wish we had growing up." Like, it means a lot.
Yeah, that's
great.
yeah.
I love that. I
There's
think
the-
that.
I'm gonna.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say is just the way what Tatiana said there, and it's just something to do with community. When I had an interaction in Discord, which was quite funny and kind of shows about allowing people to see themselves. And there's a character in the series who is kind of like he's autistically coded, but I never want to overtly say it ever, because I want people that if they see it and can reflect it, they can notice that. And I had a very funny one where someone asked, "Hey, does this character is he autistic?" Because, you know, I have an autistic son, and I'm seeing all of these things, and it's really cool because I'm reading the story with him, and he's for the first time seeing a character make the kind of choices and think the kind of way that he thinks. And it's lovely. And then I had another reader go, "No, he definitely couldn't be autistic. He couldn't be autism coded, because like I do those things too." And then someone below it is like, "Well, if it quacks like a duck, it walks like a duck." But it's the really funny point where you have these people kind of going, people are seeing these things, and that kind of that guy afterwards is like, "Wait, are you telling me that I could be?" It's like, there's a chance.
Right.
But it's this beautiful thing where the
learning about
conversation
yourself.
continues. Yeah, but the conversation continues, and people are like, "I didn't realize anybody else thought about it that way, about people approach things this way, or people approach personal interactions this way. I thought I was just weird." And it's like, "Oh no, you are, but we're all weird together."
Right? We're all
and it's
weird
just,
in our own ways.
they're the kind of really, really special moments, like when you can see that and then you affect someone. And I don't know, like, selfishly, the community is what allows you to see that. You know,
Yeah, or
having
there's
that.
a flip side where you learn more about yourself, and you're like, "Oh yeah, I wrote this character kind of be like me," and people are like, "Tatiana."
Wait, you are aware that she's 6'7"?
Oh my gosh, I love it. And I honestly think that that's like a great place to leave it at, where for this great conversation about how community is. It's all about everyone's a little bit weird, and we can build ourselves some reader communities. So
finding the people that are weird in similar ways.
Yeah, like, so our weird can mesh with our readers' weird, and we can all just weird out together. Thank you guys for being here today and for joining the panel. And so to really close out here, let's just go around and you guys can tell everyone where they can find you online. So everyone that is watching the panel can go track you down and join your community. So let's start, Tatiana. Let's start with you.
All right. So you can first my website, www.tatianaob.com, and you can join my mailing list from there. And I'm also at all the social medias at the same handle, Obey the Author.
I love it. James?
Yeah. So my website and newsletter, you can find me on jamesldulin.com. And then James L. Dulin is my handle on Twitter and Blue Sky and TikTok. So you can find me on all the platforms.
Amazing.
I just wish I had a cooler name like both of you guys, because I have to put author at the end of my name for my website because my name's so goddamn casual. But yeah, like just Ryan Cahill. Like, you'll find me on different social medias and stuff. And on my website, I have a link to my Discord, which is where all the crazies go. And they are a bunch of absolute lunatics. And it's really cool. And actually, we made a channel on Discord recently called, there's in the books when the dragons and stuff are bound to people, they're called their soulkin. And so there's a channel called Soulkins, and it's where it's the most active channel on the entire Discord, and it's just people dropping pet pictures like the whole time, just dogs and cats. And I'm looking at it right now. I open it up and someone has just gotten a really cute puppy. And if you just want your life to have more positivity, have one of those sections in any community you have, because it is joyful. Every morning I wake up and open it, and there's people from all over the world in different time zones. Here's my dog. And I'm like, I didn't know I needed this, but I do.
Now you want me to have a Discord with a channel for weapons so people can share their weapons.
That's
That'd be
also
fun.
like, you'll like this. My wife got me this for my birthday, which is a pizza axe.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah. For like, you can roll it through, and it is cool as shit.
Pizza axe.
If you say weapons, we got weapons. We got weapons for pizza. We got weapons for people. We got all this stuff here. It's actually too sharp and it's cut into the leather. I'm going to put this over here now.
Don't do yourself live on camera.
I would never. I have a rule. You don't touch weapons after one drink.
Right.
Haven't had any drinks, so that's why I'm allowed handling it.
That's why you're allowed to touch it. Okay, that's fair.
For a second, I was really hoping your Soulkind page was going to be like members of your community finding love.
Right, falling in love with each other? Oh my God. Yeah. I can't remember who it is.
I feel like that's a lawsuit waiting to happen.
There was an author that I met one time. Oh gosh. And you know what? Listeners are going to know because I think it was someone we interviewed on SFF Addicts.
You able to tell us about a romance you had with another author? This is scary.
No, who said that they had a signing, and then at the signing that they had, two people got engaged because they had met like 5 years previous at a different signing for that same author.
That is cool.
That's cute as shit, right? Okay. Yeah, anyways, sorry. Back to winding down. You can follow
more anecdotes in my head.
You can follow SFF Addicts and join our little community on Instagram, Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky. We're at SFF Addicts Pod. You can join our Patreon and get access to all of our cool shit. Or you can follow me at MJ Kuhn Books across all the main socials. And you can buy my books. And you can check out my website, which is mjkuhn.com, and join my newsletter, which
cool names.
I suck. I never update my newsletter, guys. I need help. But anyways, that is it for this episode. Stay tuned for next week's Indie Appreciation Month panel, where we're going to be talking Indie Book Marketing 101. Until then, keep reading, keep imagining, and we'll see you next time on SFF Addicts.